Today is April 6, 2020. Because it's a Monday, I will be on call all day from 11 a.m. It's a little past 11 now. I'm making this video, and I'll be on call till 9 p.m. tonight. Plus, anytime you want to get in touch with me this weekend, just go to Pixie Dust Metaphysical Boutique on Facebook, message them, go to their website. I'll link to them in the description of this video, and you can set up an appointment with me. You can use this time wisely. I mean, maybe you're at home, maybe you have some extra time. We can sit down and go over your chart, start to look at things maybe you didn't have time to do if you weren't at home, or you didn't have the time to go into a Skype reading. But now's the time for that. So anyways, let's get into it. I'm looking at tomorrow, not today. The reason for that is that tomorrow we have a full moon. So the full moon is really a time when you can think of it like a pregnancy, and this is the time when we're giving birth to something. The moon is interesting in the fact that it goes around and it sort of collects data as it hits every single point. So by data, I mean it touches on different planets through aspects. So let's say you got 25 degrees Pisces, that's where Mercury is going to be tomorrow, and it's going to be sextiling Jupiter at 25 degrees Capricorn. It's a harmonious relationship. Pisces is hospitals, institutions, things like that, which at this point in time comes into play. We've already discussed the potency of Pluto and Jupiter in relation to the coronavirus in previous videos. We've discussed Mars' relationship with those not too long ago, and luckily Mars has sort of moved away from Saturn at this point and started to begin its trek through Aquarius. Now, when the moon comes into a relationship with a planet, let's say a planet like Jupiter, which tomorrow after the moon is full, it will continue on, and it will then enter into a square between itself and Jupiter, this Jupiter and Pluto conjunction. So it's carrying all that sort of, let's call it pregnant energy, into its aspect with this potent conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto, which has been keeping the corona stuff sort of live. Now every time the moon hits something, it sort of takes in that experience based on the sign that it's in, based on the sign that the other planet is in, and then it combines its experience as it continues along. So let's say that the moon goes from having the square here, and then it'll move on, and then we'll go into the early degrees of Scorpio, and it will then square Mars, a fixed sign 90 degrees away from Mars. So then that's a different type of relationship and experience. The moon squaring Mars from Scorpio, combining the fixed energies of Scorpio with the fixed energies of Mars in Aquarius. Also combining Mars's energies of rapid expansion, growth, action, the impetus to act, assertiveness, aggressiveness, urges, impulses, with the moon's emotions. So we go into a heightened state of emotion in which the emotions may be at odds with our own actions, in that because of the fixed nature of the signs, actions and expression of emotions may be a bit slower than normal. Even though Scorpio has great depth, but Aquarius is very afraid of the emotions that they feel. This can be a very tough thing to reconcile. Now on a collective level, when this is happening, it's happening very fast. Okay? So, one thing that we're gonna keep in mind now is that as it hits each point, this point, then it hits its square with Jupiter, Pluto, then it hits its square with Mars and Saturn, and then it'll move on and into Sagittarius and the later degrees of Sagittarius, and then it will square these. And so it'll begin a track of experience, and it will hit all these points and assimilate all these different things. So what does the moon do? The moon denotes physical, material world experiences. Mostly when it's full, these are things that are happening out in the world. These are events that are taking place, people that we're meeting, or rather, we're meeting the energies of the moon and the sign through the interactions that we have with other people at this time. So we may be meeting qualities that we see in ourselves, issues that we have within ourselves. So maybe if you got the moon in Libra at this time and the moon is full, maybe we're dealing with dependency issues. Maybe we're overly dependent on a partner. Maybe we're overly dependent on a coworker. Maybe we're overly dependent on any sort of situation like that. Dependency is a huge issue when Libra's involved. Now we might be dealing with those dependencies on an emotional level. And so now is a time where you may get into a fight with somebody who's a beneficiary of yours. Maybe they're dependent on your giving and you like that, and now they're breaking away. This would be the time when this might come to a head. It might come to a head because right afterwards, the full moon is going to hit Mercury. Mercury is a planet of communication. Mercury is in the watery sign of Pisces. So again, emotions could be heightened. We're feeling everything. This is a time where we're sort of merging with the world. And the moon, even though it's in Libra and it likes relationships, Libra doesn't want to give its autonomy. Libra doesn't want to give its autonomy up completely. It's still ruled by Venus, and Venus likes relationships, but it also likes to see itself through the eyes in the lens of the relationships. Venus is about self-love and self-worth. So you start to combine these layers here. So try to keep this video kind of in the 10-minute range here. And let's keep it short and sweet. So you can start to see how the moon goes around and collects experience. So from its journey from this point right here, where it was close, let's say it was closest to the sun a half a month ago, a few weeks ago, and then it began its journey this way towards the opposition, right, which is the 180-degree aspect you see here. Along the way, it would have picked up experiences. So let's say it would have conjuncted Uranus and Taurus at the same time. It would have also been hitting an aspect to Saturn, which would have been a square because these are fixed signs. Both fixed signs, 90 degrees apart. It's an easy way to tell if the sign is fixed. If they're both fixed, then you're looking at a square. If it's both cardinal, you're looking at a square. It's an easy way to tell. Now, if the signs are both feminine, like water and earth, you're looking at something that is most likely a sextile as long as it's within the allowable orb. So as it picks up experience, it's like lots of things are happening out in the world, and it's taking all of that with it as it goes along. And then eventually, it gets to this point where the moon is the brightest and it's at the height of its power. This is why people tend to go a little crazy around full moons, is that the moon sort of takes over and you get this sort of heavy influence of the lunar cyclical phases that the moon represents. And so when the moon goes to give birth to all that it has collected in the last so many weeks here, and now it's time for it to bring those things out into the world at full capacity. This is when we sort of go over the last couple weeks. Now remember, between the waxing, which means this phase, the building of the moon to its opposition, and then the waning phase, as it gets darker and begins its roundabout conjunction with the sun, back to the 0 degree point, one thing that you're seeing is the world is being created. Okay, the world is created between the waxing and the waning moon. And the reason that is because the moon continues to pick up the experiences, and then it gives birth to them, and then it goes on to a more introspective phase. It goes back within, and then it hides, its light in conjunction with the sun, and then we sort of go over everything that's happened. We go within ourselves, and these are when we have less of the outward experiences, which is right at the new moon, the conjunction here with the sun. So with this and the coronavirus and all this shit that we got going on, okay, let's just be smart, all right? And let's know that times when the moon is at the height of its power are times when you want to be a bit cautious about going out into the world, because that's the time when real physical events and things tend to occur. Now, as the moon continues to touch different planets, it continues to bring those energies into your realm of experience. More so when it's on the waxing phase, less so when it's on the waning phase, but it still is so nonetheless. So, beware of this full moon and then immediate square to Jupiter and Pluto. Normally this is a time, the sun in Aries, where we're going out into the world. It's the season of planting seeds, of getting things ready for the summer, of beginning to build so that we can reap something later for all the seeds that we've sown, meaning the work that we've done, the ideas that we've come up with and put into motion during the springtime. But because we're all basically getting hit off here and we're not able to go out into the world, this sort of planting of the seeds is going on at home, in the house. And the energies can tend to build. The emotions tend to get high. People are rubbing up on each other sometimes in not so many of the pleasant ways. And things that we could ignore while we were off working in the world, we can no longer ignore while we're sitting at home watching the world delve itself sort of into chaos. Now is the time to just be cautious, smarten up, and begin to pay attention to these emotions and not to ignore them like an Aquarian might, not to repress them like an Arian might, okay, but to bring some balance to them at this time because you got the moon in Libra. Let's use the energy that we're working with now. Let's look at areas where we may be dependent on others, or be dependent on our jobs, or be dependent on things that is actually causing us, or maybe we as a nation and as a collective are dependent on a large chain of supply for food. We don't grow our own foods in our own yards, and we don't have food that's just readily and freely being grown in the world. And we might want to ask ourselves why at this time. Why are we dependent on everything being grown somewhere else? Why don't we take a more sustainable approach, start growing food in our own backyard, start growing food much more locally? This way we don't have to worry when stuff like this hits, because we can all sustain ourselves. There's just some ways we can begin to think about this. So anyways, I'll be doing readings today. Video went a little longer than I expected. It took me an extra minute or so to really explain this thing out, but hopefully I'll be talking with you soon if you're going to get a reading. If not, I hope you enjoyed this, and have a great day.